All right, greetings, good folks. Greetings, greetings. Welcome to the Ujamaa Hour. This is Michael Strode of the Coconut Collaborative. You are live on the Ujamaa Hour. We are starting a bit later this evening, you may notice. So sorry for my folks in the Central Standard Time who are possibly not getting to see this because you decided you needed to go to bed instead. All is well there. We intended to kind of broadcast at 7:30, but of course there was a bit of scheduling challenge, just kind of bringing a guest in from the West Coast. And so it's okay. We're going to go ahead and get this broadcast logged in for the second Monday. We'll just have it 2 hours later here. But we want to make sure that we get this on subject, on topic. We want to close out the year strong with a very good interview and really just kind of continue to bring forward what the Ujamaa Hour has been bringing forward, which is the cooperative economic strategies that are in place that are being used in Black communities throughout the nation. And just ways that we are doing this solidarity economy thing that might be slightly different from how it may look in other communities. One of the things that I think about in terms of when Ujamaa Hour started, it again was a work of curiosity. I was wondering what was out there, what stories there were to tell, what conversations there were to have. There were conversations that I was already having that I wanted to have in a more public forum, in a more public space. I wanted to have those conversations cataloged and archived. I wanted those conversations to be public record because what I feel about those conversations was that there were strategies, there were elements of those conversations that were being conveyed, that were being communicated, and I didn't want them to just be sitting with me. I wanted them to be sitting in spaces where other people could access them as well. So that's what we are doing here on the Ujamaa Hour. I have not had the benefit yet of doing my solidarity sprint, my nationwide, worldwide tour, but soon come. But certainly there are others out there that are taking trips and seeing how these strategies are being implemented in our communities. Because ultimately, again, when we talk about how stories are told, how history is written, it's important that we have our own voices, that we have our own stories cataloged in ways that they can be accessed by future generations. Because if they can't be, then someone else is telling a version of our story, and who knows what they may leave out. So we want to make sure that for the future record, for the archive, for posterity, we have our words, and that's what the Ujamaa Hour represents. So there are lots of exciting developments that I bring forward this month. I had an opportunity while I was penning an email. So I've been penning a newsletter, an announcement to the members of the Coconut Collaborative. And I've had an opportunity to reflect on 2 years in existence. The Coconut Collaborative was established in 2017, at least formally established. Certainly the idea and the work and the stories and the harvesting goes back further than that. But in terms of its formal establishment, 2017 is the sort of birth date of the organization. And I had an opportunity while writing this newsletter recently to the membership to reflect on what's happened over the course of 2 years. There's been a lot of things that have happened. There have been a lot of transformations and changes. There was a way that I thought that I was going to be coming out with these initiatives here and bringing this time bank to Chicago. That is not how it looks now, which is necessary. That's evolution, right? That's emergence. You come out and you think there's a particular way that the message has to be conveyed, and then you realize that if you do it that way, it won't land. It won't fit. So you have to actually measure the terrain. You actually have to till the earth, and then you have to plant seed at proper time, right? And that's certainly something that we conveyed as we were launching this initiative during the permaculture course of Black Oak Center. It was really about that social permaculture element. So how do we cultivate relationships that will actually ensure that the land that we have to till is tilled by people who like each other, right? Because if they like each other, they're more likely to work with each other for a longer period of time. And that's certainly something that we learned very early on, in the Ujamaa Hour. We came out very scholarly, very erudite. We were going to give time bank lectures. We were going to have COLA 101s, and we thought that was the best way to convey the message, but it was not. Sometimes you have to take another angle, take another route. And so we found that, there's some experiential elements, to how you convey time banking. There's some immersive and artistic and creative elements to how you convey time banking. And those are all things that now exist, that have now come into practice in terms of the ways that we do this work in the Colonet Collaborative. And just over the course of this past year, the legislation, HB 3663, the Limited Worker Cooperative Association Act here in Chicago, a lot of the work that I've been able to do with the Cooperative Developer Fellowship via Nexus Community Partners and Democracy at Work Institute, the work of the Illinois Coalition for Cooperative Advancement, the work with the New Economy Coalition and helping to plan the annual member meeting. All of these things have been tremendously valuable learning experiences, and the ability to be able to review that, revisit some of that time, that period, while writing this email, was an opportunity for me to harvest some of the learnings once more. So, there's been so little time to reflect over this past year that to sit down and to compose this email and to allow that reflection to settle over you allows you to recognize what you were doing in this moment and then what that means for what you're going to be doing in the future. And the reason that I was composing this email was because we've got somewhat big news, right? The Colonet Collaborative has actually gone ahead and taken its first formal space. But before I debut that, I'm just going to give you one of the other origin points of this broadcast, which was Kali Okuno visiting UIC back in, this was in 2018, I want to say. I don't think this was this year, but I'm pretty sure this was 2018. But these are some words that Kali Okuno had for the folks that were there at UIC that I'll bring into the broadcast now.
Creating and building capacity locally, and the asymmetry between the capacity you need and the capacity you have, and how do you distribute that. And so, given that we're at Nevada University, although we're far from Mississippi, maybe you could, what would be the three things that you think, and it may not just be capacity, but the three things that you could use, that you think you need, Cooperation Jackson needs now?
So let me, a good question, thank you. One of the reasons why here recently I've been speaking kind of more general, abstract, the way I started. Our primary need is for y'all here in Chicago to create a strong network and a strong solidarity economy here. We need that more than anything that y'all might come down to Jackson and do, other than throw us some money. Y'all want to throw us some money, we can use it. All the money you can give us, and we'll put it to good use. Don't worry about that. But outside of that, we need other thriving examples and other folks that we can trade with, right, on new terms.
Yes. So, so hopefully that came through the broadcast fine. I when I initially did it early on back in the first broadcast, there was some feedback and things that factored in. But what did Kali say there? Folks in the room were asking like, hey, what do you all need? What needs to happen with Cooperation Jackson? And he was like, well, look, ultimately, we're not trying to build isolated pockets of cooperation. What we're trying to do is we're trying to build networks between projects. We're trying to build networks between our initiatives. We're not simply trying to cultivate a sort of isolated utopia, but ultimately, we're trying to recreate a world. And in order to recreate a world, roots and trees and branches and elements have to interconnect and intersect. We actually have to create an ecosystem that is connected to something else. In order for any of our individual projects to flourish. And so the Ujamaa Hour is rooted in, that intersection and that connection between the initiatives that we've talked about so far, from Counterbalance ATX down there in Austin, Texas, and 400+1, Soil Generation in Philly. We've talked to Renee Hatcher at the John Marshall Community Enterprise and Solidarity Economy Clinic. We've talked with Latier Pifus, a Womanist Working Collective, also in Philly, now relocated here to Chicago. We've talked with Dara Cooper, in the National Black Food and Justice Alliance. So we've had all of these folks who are represented throughout the ecosystem talking about their work. And hopefully what we've done so far is give the elements of the intersections, the elements of the ecosystem, the ways that some of these projects can connect are some of the things that you're beginning to see as some more of these interviews come through. And hopefully in the new year, we can continue to spread some of that storytelling and continue to draw that narrative out into space. And with that, I just wanted to share the announcement with the Ujamaa Hour. Coconut Collaborative has moved. We've gone ahead and taken a space within Floods Hall, which is in Hyde Park on 53rd Street. So what does that mean for the Coconut Collaborative? Well, what that means is that we've generally been doing a lot of our time salons, a lot of our events, a lot of the activations that we do in spaces that are borrowed or on loan or in sort of temporary partnerships. And, the challenge of that is just that, you sometimes want to do more activations, but you don't really want to negotiate some of the scheduling that's required to do that. Or you want to be able to kind of activate in a different way. I don't want to travel with all of my materials. That's certainly the case. But what the Floods Hall partnerships means is that now we'll be able to do more of the member orientations that we've been holding off with for the Time Bank. In a more regular fashion. So members will be able to go ahead and engage more deeply with that. We'll be able to go ahead and present some more of the elements that exist inside of the Time Bank that people have not been able to see as of yet, right? There are lots of elements there's lots of work that the Time Bank is doing behind the scenes that people don't get to experience and don't get to engage. And the opportunity of the Floods Hall partnership is that we now have a space where we can experiment a bit more in terms of our programming. So hopefully we look forward to seeing you in 2020. And, the question that I was posing last month, where I was wondering, is this broadcast going to continue? Because I couldn't really up the production value in the way that I wanted to. That question's off the table because now I actually have a space where I can go ahead and build out this podcast studio here in Floods Hall. So that, we can go ahead and continue this broadcast, build on this broadcast, see how, other people can take advantage of, whatever learning that I've been able to do in this time with these tools. So I'm looking forward to 2020 and looking forward to bringing you all in with that. And looking forward to more segments of the Ujamaa Hour. We'll go ahead and be getting our guests lined up for, January and forward. So if there's someone that you want to see on the Ujamaa Hour, you should probably mention them in the comment section, and perhaps I'll reach out to them with an intro. We'll get them on the broadcast. Heading for that covers what we're looking forward to in the future, both of the Coconut Collaborative as well as the Ujamaa Hour. I want to give you a bit of current reflections before we bring our guest in. So what am I now reading, right? So we've done a few of these now reading segments. Earthseed, right? So Earthseed is actually the collected, the incomplete trilogy, right? So, the two pieces of Earthseed, Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. You could take my Emergent Strategy black card. I'm one of those folks who has been deep in Adrienne Brown's Emergent Strategy, but I have not actually read Octavia Butler. It's mostly because I was not a fiction reader as a child. I jumped immediately to nonfiction and biographies. Just kind of cast fiction to the side for many years. to my great misfortune, even though my mother's a fiction writer. But that's another story. So I'm digging into Earthseed right now. Mostly I just needed to. It was just time. It was time for me to go ahead and read it because I've been talking about it enough. I am enjoying it so far. That's sort of strange to say for a piece of dystopic fiction, but yes, it is something that I am enjoying navigating my way through and seeing how it bears relation to present, and how it bears relation mostly to an examination of what how we adapt, how we grow, how we change, how we emerge when circumstances meet us, right? And this is something that I'll be talking actually with Bob Fred Carter. I'm going to bring him into the broadcast here in the near future because I've been trying to get back to doing something called the Community Resiliency Address that he used to do at the Healthy Food Hub, which was where he would speak to some of those aspects of peak oil, speak to some of those aspects of energy descent that Black Oaks is very directly engaged in on the eco campus, and really just present them as necessary things that are confronting Black communities that we need to engage with. They're questions that we need to answer. They're questions we need to grapple with because ultimately we are one of those frontline environmental justice communities that are on the front line of displacement, on the front line of climate on climate change and climate challenge. And so it's necessary that we are answering and engaging those questions. And Earthseed and Parable of the Sower, Parable of the Talents, give us an opportunity to kind of engage that in a way that's through fiction, right? What else am I reading? A Black Anarchism reader by the Black Rose Anarchist Federation, pardon me. I've been engaged in just kind of an informal sort of mapping of the anarchistic lens in Black communities, and really prompted by William C. Anderson and Zoe Samudzi in their text As Black as Resistance, which talks about the fact that that Black folk have existed historically in a state of statelessness, in a state where there was no protection by government, and so we've always had to engage with the quality of anarchism in the way that we've lived. We've always had to discover what mutual aid meant. I was just listening to a podcast episode earlier, Ergo, with Essence McDowell, and she was talking about the text that she and Miriam Kaba completed, which was a walking tour of Chicago, mapping the histories of Black women here, and really talking about all of the different settlement houses and social service agencies that were started, that were launched by Black women, specifically because when Black people got to this city, nobody was trying to take care of us. And so we had to figure out ways that we could take care of ourselves. And so, anarchism is deep and heavy within our lives. And, we certainly don't have to be scared of the term because the term simply means a recognition that, in the absence of state, what exists. And we have created what exists. We have created communities that have taken care of one another in the absence of the sort of larger structure of state. And what else am I reading? The Black Social Economy in the Americas. So this text was mentioned last month when I was interviewing with Imhotep Adisa. The Black Social Economy in the Americas actually speaks very clearly to the fact that Black people have been, again, building their own economies and figuring out their own space, their own ways to engage financial, well-being or financial health and community wealth. There's an interesting element here where they're talking about, or an interesting narrative here where they're talking about the Black women bankers of Canada. And essentially, these are Black women from the Caribbean who've migrated to Canada, who've brought their practice of susu with them. And as they brought that practice of susu with them, they've continued that practice even in the realm where they have access to, more savvy financial institutions, because the susu is a place of trust. The susu is a place of relationship. And so that's something that they've come to trust. And, it was just very interesting to kind of hear one of the bankers in the text, who was asked about the susu, and they were like, why would they do that? Like, why would they be involved? Why would you give your money to some person that you just in your neighborhood. I mean, they don't know anything about investing, but what they know about is they know about security, they know about relationship, and they know what it means to actually have, again, someone you can trust. And someone you can engage with. And so those practices continue. The Black social economy in the Americas actually just talks about the fact that we have engaged in practices that have secured our community over the generations when other people, left us to our own devices. And we found ways forward. And so that's what we continue to do. And that's what the Ujamaa Hour is about. And now we will go ahead and bring in our guest, and we'll be talking about some more ways that that social economy, that solidarity economy, that cooperation shows up in our communities. So our guest this evening is going to be Yavette Holts. Yavette Holts is the founder of Cowrie Village and Bay Area organization of Black-owned businesses. The Cowrie Village is a social enterprise whose focus is empowering marginalized communities to build and sustain solutions for a better living. And it has 3 pillar projects beneath it, which are our BAOBAB, Bay Area Organization of Black-owned businesses, Barter to the People, and Rootical Gathering. Yavette Holts is also a practicing massage therapist, therapeutic massage practitioner, offering a range of energetic therapies, massage therapies, and also making space available to other practitioners to bring their practice into her space. So with that, I want to bring on the line Yavette Holts. All right. Welcome, Yavette.
Hey, greetings. I can't see you on the screen, but I hear you loud and clear. Mike, can you hear me?
I can indeed hear you, yes.
Spectacular. Yay! Thank you for that wonderful introduction and kind of primer on all that's been going on with the Colonet Collective since your last broadcast. Very interesting. Thank you.
Absolutely. So why don't you go ahead and open us up with just giving us some insight into your background and maybe just trace the arc or tell the story of what brought you to your current work.
Yeah, it's really it's a very linear and straight trajectory from injustice to action. We began really in 2015, late 2014, 15. It all kind of coalesced around the announcement that the murderer of Michael Brown would not receive any indictments, would go free and walk free. And most folks in the community, this is with regard to the Bay Area Organization of Black-owned businesses, most folks in community were like, completely, well, at that point, still stunned by the lack of response from the administration, from the folks who, quote unquote, were in charge, and decided, you know what, let's make it so that it hits them where they actually feel it, because they seem so unable to acknowledge, human justice. So maybe it's economic justice, and not spend another dollar outside of the Black community. So in the Bay Area, at that point, we did not have any other kind of directory or resource to guide us to Black-owned businesses specifically. So we decided to start that, and fast forward to where we are today, that became the Bay Area Organization of Black-owned businesses. But as you mentioned, the Bay Area Organization of Black-owned businesses, aka BAOBAB, is one project of our kind of broader, more umbrella organization called Cowrie Village. And Cowrie Village is really built to encourage folks to reassess their relationship with money and their relationship with what money can do, the energy of money in your life, and its hold over how we move. Cowrie Village is an economic engine, an economic hub that has 3 projects within it that are geared to meet folks where they are in relationship to their connection with money. So you said barter to the people, you said Rootical Gathering, and you said BAOBAB. And those are all three of the three pillars within the Cowrie Village umbrella. And barter to the people is basically a pop-up village, a pop-up market where folks do commerce without currency. And there's a lot to that, and we can come back to it. But just to touch on it, it is encouraging folks to barter and leave the cash at home, take the bother out of barter. And then Rootical Gathering is, and I love what you said about the Susu in Canada, the Black women bankers of Canada. We also have a Susu here in Oakland called Rootical Gathering, and our Susu is kind of contemporized to create an investment arm as well, but it's solely and directly related to the Susu practice that comes to us from the motherland. And then finally, the Bay Area Organization of Black-Owned Businesses, which meets folks who have yet to really adventure in their thought around operating or thriving without cash, still feel that it's super important for their livelihood and for their comfort in life. So here we've created a way for folks to be intentional about their spending and make it easier for them to find the Black-owned businesses to support. And that's the directory. And then BAOBAB has a component that works toward improving the landscape for Black-owned businesses in the Bay Area.
Okay, and you mentioned briefly how BAOBAB came to existence. Can you go ahead and just give us some background on how you came to the work of Cowrie Village overall?
Sure. Yeah, Cowrie Village actually came out of a period of time that I lived outside of the country. I lived in Mexico for 3 years, from 2008 to 2011. And what I noticed, what I observed in my time there was just a revamping of my relationship with the kind of busy to be busy for the sake of being busy that we have here in the States, and observed a lot of them. The thing about Mexico is that first of all, it's predominantly Mexican inhabitants. So their nationals are the majority there. And it's a different relationship. It's a different experience to be among people who are clear that their roots extend down into the land that they're walking on at that time. So that it's just that whole thing of scarcity. I didn't feel it. Mm-hmm. That whole thing of competition for space, I didn't feel it. And what I did observe were people really just having life for this, to not working to live, or I'm sorry, not living to work, but working to live, to have a life. Folks enjoying, because we were in a beachside town, enjoying life for all of the elements, the natural elements, the human elements, and one of the main things, not using credit as much, cash, and that's it. And oftentimes trade, barter, and just a general leaning in to the positive. Not saying everyone, I mean, I'm not trying to say it's a utopia in Mexico, but I definitely experienced a different orientation of priorities. And I wanted that to come back home with me when I came here, when I returned back to the States. And at that point, I also connected with others who had a similar observation and a similar trajectory. An elder named Ujamaa Selassie, who is actually in Detroit and has a lot of wisdoms and experiences in her lifetime that really help spiritualize the relationship with the system and with how we deal with currency, how we deal with money, how we deal with each other, how we deal with our connection with ancestors, how we deal with our connections with nature and Mother Earth, all of that. And so, I wanted to extend that when I returned to the United States. And it wasn't long before I connected with People's Grocery, also out there creating healthy foods in what at that point was considered a food desert in West Oakland, and started working with their Growing Justice Institute, where they had a small fellowship with a small stipend, but enough to just keep you going, pay your phone bill, keep your project afloat. And that was a 12-month project, a 12-month fellowship. And from that spawned these 3 pillars of Cowrie Village.
Okay. So you've given us a bit of background on BAOBAB. Why don't you dive into digging into both Rootical Gathering and Barter to the People? Tell us sort of what is the sort of nexus or impetus that drives those 2 initiatives.
I would love to. Thank you so much for that invitation. So as I said, Cowrie Village is really an economic hub for meeting people where they are in their relationship with money and their emphasis towards poverty. So some folks we found are really ready. Like, you know what? I'm ready to experiment with not using cash. I'm ready to experiment with the other forms of capital that are available to me. And for that, we started this Barter to the People, which is a pop-up market. We were organizing them once a month, and we set it up where we encouraged vendors to identify what it was that they would sell or what they would offer and what they would accept in exchange for those offerings. So, say for instance, you make pickles.
Mm-hmm.
You make pickles, and you have jarred pickles that would otherwise sell for $15 a jar. You might say, I would accept, a pedicure in exchange for 2 jars of pickles. I would accept, a grocery delivery for 2 jars of pickles. Or you make a short list, 3 or 4 things that you might be willing to accept in exchange for what you're offering. That gets posted at your table, and folks walk around through the market, and it operates almost like a silent auction in that there's an envelope or a little box, and there's some bid cards, and people look at what the vendor has said they would accept and make a note. I can give you a pedicure, and I just can't wait to try your pickles. So that goes in the envelope along with 2 or 3 others. At the end of the market, the vendor can look at what they've received as far as offers and decide which, if any, of those offers they are interested to accept. And then our organization, Cowrie Village and Barter to the People help to facilitate that trade. So we put some parameters on it, and those parameters are time-based and they are intention-based. So, for instance, folks need to sign an agreement or an acknowledgement that says, my intentions are to offer the best service and practice that and I enter this agreement with every intention to complete it in a timely manner, et cetera, et cetera. Some best practices, honor code type agreements. And then we send out reminder emails, et cetera, to make sure that the exchange is facilitated and successfully completed. And what's beautiful about that is that it really encourages, and it encourages folks to go deep into what it is that they value within themselves and what they can bring forward. Inevitably, whenever we initially introduce this idea to folks, they would say, "Oh, I don't know what I have to offer. I don't have anything to offer." And that's just kind of a reflex, knee-jerk response. I think folks are so accustomed to the anonymity and the speed of the fiat currency that it takes extra encouragement to turn that around and recognize that by delving deep into your personal offerings, you are actually liberating yourself from a system that depends on your lockstep, that depends on your lack of imagination. Let's say that. So we had done the Barter to the People 6 or 7 months in a row, and it really, I think, is something that we want to bring back into community. It takes a fair amount of organization, but we believe that now some of the technology can automate some of the things that need to happen to facilitate those exchanges and keep things within the boundaries of success, and are excited about those developments and bringing that back in 2020. One of the things that I, just to encourage and keep that barter piece going is with my massage practice. You mentioned before that I have a massage practice. This is another part of what I do out in the world. And even there, I encourage barter and non-currency exchanges to the point where I've included a barter option in my payment portal, and I even exchange time and space with other practitioners who may have clients and not have a space to provide the service. So sharing that, and also offering the barter exchange, where on my website folks can jot down what it is they'd like to offer in exchange for the massage experience or massage session. And then I can opt to accept or not based on what my needs are. And one of the pieces that makes that really possible is to establish a barter budget so that you're not overextending yourself, or one is not overextending oneself for the sake of barter. We love to support and advocate for that, for folks to use cash-based experiences in their commerce. But it's important to remember that until, we have a more robust system of offerings that are barter-based, we do have to still maintain some relationship with cash, and it's important to keep your lights on, keep gas in your car. But if you can establish a budget for your barter, for instance, once I've covered my, hard costs that can't be handled with cash, I open up my my monthly budget to receive in exchange with barter. I've received hair, my loctician I've paid with barter, my son's tutor, piano lessons, house cleaning, groceries. I've done several different types of barter exchanges, and I think the key there is to be flexible and be willing to ask and encourage and offer. I mean, you can't. What if someone says you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take? So, and as you suggest and offer, if someone says no, I can't do it like that, that's okay. But guess what? They heard that you were willing, and the more that is heard, the more you've planted the seed and encouraged that opportunity for future. So it's a very multi-layered endeavor, but I think well worth it. Mm-hmm. And the same is true for Rootical Gathering. And I'll just quickly encapsulate, because you talked about the susu.
Before you do, Yvette, down at the bottom of your screen near that heart, click on that circle.
Click on the circle at the bottom of my screen?
Yeah.
Next to the heart?
Yeah, where it says stop sharing. Go ahead and click that. Oh, okay, boom. All right. Oh, yeah, your camera had flipped off and you were on screen sharing. Okay, great. You continue.
Oh, sorry about that.
No worries. IT guy, I show up all over the place. Go ahead and continue.
I see you too. I was wondering why I couldn't see you as we were talking.
Yes, go ahead and continue with Rootical Gathering now.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. So Rootical Gathering is a susu, and folks get a little confused sometimes about susus because they think of them as those pyramid marketing schemes where you become a entree or a dessert or whatever, depending on how many people you've brought in and that kind of thing. But in fact, with a susu, at least our susus for Rootical Gathering, once the circle is established, it's closed. So there's no recruiting going on. What's going on once the circle is closed and we've come together is interacting on a very personal and very deep level with the sisters in the circle. And we are coming together to make agreements around what is the contribution amount going to be, what is the frequency of distribution going to be, and what is the intention for the funds once they are distributed. The Rootical Gathering susus typically are 7 to 9 participants. And for the most part, we've always just been a female identifying group, so Black women in particular. And we come together on a spiritual basis to support each other, talk deeply around some of the issues that sometimes don't always get aired around the relationship with money and the load that we bear and put in moving things forward. And we clean the money and we sing over it. So I have some photos, maybe I can share them with you, but where, the bowls are with herbs and Florida water and essential oils, and literally just putting the money in the water and letting it soak while we meet and eat. And then at some point we take it out and lay it out on a towel or something like that and let it dry. And by the end of the evening, we're usually together for 2 hours, one person within the circle receives their distribution. And the distribution is not based on, I have an emergency and I need a new refrigerator, or my kid needs braces, or whatever. The distribution is based on whose turn it is. And we establish what the order will be, whether it's alphabetical, by birth dates, or just by luck, by drawing sticks. But everyone receives their distribution on their day regardless. And the distribution is, let's say there's 7 women, and let's say everyone agrees, okay, we're going to put $50 in every month when we come together. That's $350 every month. If it's your turn and you're the first, you have to agree that you're going to continue to come all the way to the end, even though you got your money at the very beginning. And if it's your turn and you're the last, same thing. You have to agree to come and contribute every time until it's your turn. That right there is a deep, deep, deep thing. Because if there's 7 women and you're going to meet once a month, you're going to come for 7 months, even though your turn is only the second turn or the last turn or whatever. So that in and of itself is is a big commitment. You can't imagine how many times it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I had to work late. Oh, la 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 la. So that one right there is a super huge commitment. Of that distribution each month, a small portion, and that amount, again, is agreed by the women at the very beginning, is set aside so that, let's say, those 7 women who are putting $350 together agree we're going to take $50 and set it aside each distribution. So if it's your turn now, you get $300 and $50 goes back into the pool. At the end of that 7-month period, everyone's received $300 when it was their turn, but there's also $350 in an unclaimed or unmarked pool that those women are going to decide how they want to invest that money. Whether it's in a mutual fund or something that's going to earn interest, that's okay. Could do it like that. They could reinvest it into community. We want to paint a crosswalk in front of that preschool, and it takes too long for the city processes to get it done, and we just want it done, so we're going to do it. We're going to pay for the school lunches for the 2nd grade class at that elementary school for anybody who didn't, who had a late fee or whatever. Any way they want to contribute it to community, that's up to them. And the beauty of that is they don't have to, they can become their own grant making organization. Mm-hmm. Based on whatever they choose. And yet at the same time, they've had these 7 months together to find that central harmony between them. They each received $300 themselves when it was their distribution turn. They gained the trust that it took to reconnect every month, even when your turn had passed. And they're able to become their own grant-making organization. That's a Rootical Gathering. Yeah, and so those are the pillars of Cowrie Village.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been harping this weekend, in celebration. My daughter got a new camera. And I've been telling folks that, it's not necessarily the outcome of the camera that I was most proud of. It was the process, right? Like 75% of that was her money, and it was just through her and I just in this conversation, in this constant dialogue, just kind of talking about like, hey, yeah, what is your goal? Like, you could just set this money aside, and then when you have a goal, it's here, and then suddenly a goal shows up, and it's this camera. And, she pulls out lots of her money. Some angel investor, with no hair up here shows up and gives her the rest of the money. But essentially, yeah, I can certainly see how, being in a situation, that ritual of talking about your goals with one another and just kind of sharing that space over 7 months can be a very powerful and impactful thing.
Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. And still close to many of the people who I've been in circle with, you know, and that's another piece of it, is that because the trust issue is so critical to the success of a Rootical Gathering, the participation in it is based on invitation. So that part too. So then by the end of that circle, you know, even though there may be someone that was invited by another person that I didn't know before, now we're a community and we're sisters.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and recognizing that, you know, in our organizing spaces here, we talk a lot, you know, about taking the story and leaving the names. You know, you've mentioned in sort of other conversation that we've had about the intimacy of these circles and just about the vulnerability of that space. Is there any reflections or things that you might want to share around that intimacy and that vulnerability?
yeah, wow. Well, I can just say that it's so, the work there is so deep, and it's so surprising for almost everyone that I've participated in the circle with. It's, the feedback is that it's so surprising how deep that connection really is, and an example is, you know, most recent circle where you know, things happen. You know, so you're on the track, you're on a trajectory with this circle, and it's great, and you're planning to meet every week, and then someone gets sick, or someone loses their job, or someone, you know, for a number of things, anything like that, and I personally felt those types of changes so deeply because these people were so connected, and now their challenge is part of my life as well. And because I'm working on a project, we're in this together. So what challenges they're facing, I'm facing, and I feel like that's really important to think about. For instance, when people talk about, oh, let's just go get some land, and we're gonna all go live out there off the grid, and we're gonna be in our own utopia land, blah blah. And I'm like, but you have to realize that, you know, personalities, we don't stop being people, and we don't stop being broken or whatever we are just because we're now living out off the grid. There's so much work around interpersonal relationships that really need to happen, and the money aspect of the Rootical Gathering, as we were participating in these circles and things, became the least important part. You understand what I'm saying?
Yes.
The least important part of the work, the depth of relationship and understanding of interpersonal connections. Just really, yeah, I can't emphasize that aspect enough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and to your point about the land, you know, I'll certainly, you know, maybe borrow or paraphrase something from Baba Fridge. You know, I mean that cold weather, that first winter will beat dry any pretensions that you have about what your personality is. You know, your niceness gonna melt right away at that point. So you know, the nature will make all of you show up for real. So
All straight up, I'm not playing. That's
yes.
real. And you know, when I was living in Mexico, I did go and visit and spend some time at an eco village like that, where folks had decided, oh, we're going to get out here, we're going to go out and live on the land, and la 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 la. Some of it absolutely fabulous. Some of it super duper challenging.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Just like you say, it's going to bring every different part of you out to the surface. Because man, when you have to start using the lime toilets and all that other stuff, and solar powered hot water and all that stuff. Oh yeah. Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. So I want to switch directions a bit. So we're gonna go back over here to BAOBAB, and so tell me about the Oakland Black Arts Business District. What's your relationship there?
Yeah, the acronym BAM, the Black Arts and Movement District, Black Arts Movement and Business District. Essentially, what happened there is that downtown Oakland is undergoing an incredible surge of financial infusion by developers who saw that, wow, here's some properties, some land grabs that we can make because it's been undervalued. And the proximity to Silicon Valley, the proximity to, the technology mecca of the world has really created some fast and furious millionaires and billionaires and fast and furious need for expansion of office spaces and the housing and the unhoused in this area as a result of all of that infusion, and the administration who really sees that as an opportunity to bolster its revenue from tax income, created a really incredible, what they call the perfect storm for these developers to come in and just land grab and displace people at a very fast rate. So in downtown Oakland, it was determined that there's a historic band of businesses along 14th Street from Lake Merritt to Castro Street or to the and that was declared the Black Arts Movement and Business District. And that happened through the work of a lot of incredible, really deep-rooted citizens of this town. Ayodele Nzinga, Marvin X, Paul Dobbs, to name just a few, Eric Arnold. And I was invited as a result of my work with BAOBAB to participate on the board of directors of the Black Arts Movement and Business District and help the City Council of Oakland declare that area as a historic and important Black business district. The next step for that was to put some teeth in that declaration so that it benefited our Black business community. Mm-hmm. And so what that meant was requiring the developers to negotiate an impact fee, not just for the city's general fund coffers, but specific to the Black Arts Movement and Business District. And right now, that means that, in particular, the lead on the Black Arts Movement and Business District, Ayodele Nzinga, has been negotiating below market retail space, extra aspects toward housing, et cetera, and as well funds that have been able to be distributed to different social justice and change makers working toward the betterment of Black business and the retention of Black businesses in that district. And so starting 2020, I'll be working along with a business incubator to provide technical assistance to small businesses and help to connect them and facilitate the retention and getting them into some of the new retail spaces that will be established in that district. And so that's been really interesting as far as, connecting them with the developers and making clear what are the necessities to create a more fertile business landscape for Black-owned businesses. And in effect, doing what we can to level the playing field for them. And doing similar work in the city of Berkeley as well, with the City of Berkeley's Office of Economic Development, doing work to connect, like for instance, right now I'm really involved with the Black Rep in Berkeley, the Black Repertory Theater Group. That has been in Berkeley for, I want to say, over 50 years. It has been, oh gosh, it's in the great state of disrepair. It's been ignored, essentially, or there's been the result of what looks like being ignored at that location. And so we are working toward facilitating the connection that will help them get the resources they need to do the renovation, to restore their iconic position in the South Berkeley's Lauren Business District. There's several businesses in that area that are deep in the roots like that. People's Bazaar, Reed's Records, even Paul's Headquarters, a barbershop. All those businesses have been there 30 plus years in South Berkeley, and are and have a real problem with trust within in relation to the city of Berkeley. Mm-hmm. And with all of the the development going on there, they are all at risk because they have high equity, but no resources to liquefy that equity. Mm-hmm. And so the developers are coming in and just being like, hey, I want to take that one retail establishment storefront that you have and turn it into like a 8-story 16. I optimize that thing. And sure, the resident there would love to do that too. They don't have the resources. They've been slugging it out in an uneven playing field. So our work is to help establish the kind of communication that can begin to reseed trust that the businesses can put to use to access resources to keep their businesses where they are and keep community rooted where it is. Because each displacement is not just one small business, it's like a whole ecosystem, like you said before, mm-hmm. that is tainted, and without oxygen, will disintegrate. And then where's our community? Where Absolutely. Are our roots?
Yeah. I certainly see it, definitely continuing the sort of ecological metaphor as a process of erosion. We've got a commercial area where I'm at, that used to have, we had a couple of those legacy businesses. We had a legacy hardware store, we had a legacy record store, and we had, there's a laundromat that's there, whatever, but effectively there was a new developer came in, or bought the sort of commercial development, bought that piece of commercial property. There was a fire on that property, and so they decided to kind of pour all their own money into fixing that piece. And so in their mind, they were like, okay, I have to get all of my money back out, to kind of even things out. Well, at this point, they pushed out the record store owner because somebody complained about his music that he was playing out of doors, which is what he's been doing for 30 years. The folks in the hardware store decided they didn't want to continue the business, and there was no one who wanted to buy it or purchase it. They couldn't really sell. And it's just like, now just pockmarked, like these little just hollowed out, spaces that, aren't going to be occupied until the community completely turns over, which, at that point is not of value to the residents, right? And so it's definitely a vicious cycle. And now the anchor tenant there used to be a Walgreens, and that has now left with the sort of Walgreens closure. Possibly because they were being charged $30,000 a month in rent. But So it's certainly that erosion. Is a cycle that can continue.
Yeah, and it's like one at a time. Like they just drip, drip, drip. And then the next thing you know, it's like, oh, you wake up and you look around and you go, why is there a Subway on every,
Yeah.
Subway at Taco Bell? And like you say, Walgreens, just the big box stores and the things that create culture and community are gone.
Yes.
And then they
Yes.
wonder, why we don't have any more, why we have so many homeless people, why we have so many people who are in such dire circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's it. That's exactly the reason why. But, it's like watching your hair grow or something to a certain degree. Like you can't notice it until it's too late sometimes. And so it's, yeah, it's important to step in and help the policymakers who are creating these zoning ordinances and these different small business regulations that they're not looking at what it takes or what it means to the small business owner. Generally, what they're looking at is what is it going to take to get that developer in to get rid of that blighted corner.
Right.
But really, that's a short-sighted solution.
Absolutely. So I want to ask about Optima. So I know you mentioned you're working with Optima. I saw on their website that they're a cooperative. Certainly, Berkeley and Oakland, hotbeds and Sustainable Economies Law Center, popping with the cooperatives there. California Cooperative Corporation. Y'all just showing out. So, so you haven't mentioned that, well, one, there's the question about, if you want to talk to your relationship with Optima, you can certainly mention that. But are you working with any cooperative models in your work, in your potential incubation practice?
Oh, wow, what a great question. I will say that in the big picture, long run, my goal is for BAOBAB, the Bay Area Organization of Black-Owned Businesses, to be a platform cooperative so that our members are also owners of the organization. Mm-hmm. So that kind of like, I don't know if you have REI out there or any other cooperatives, but at the end of the year, any dividends available are distributed to the members. Mm-hmm. And that's what we'd like to see happen. And that is that modeled after my relationship with Optima. Optima Business Bootcamp is a member cooperative, and it is also a business incubator, encouraging its participants to become members of Optima. So not only can you go through there and strengthen your business profile, your business's standing, your business's structure and business model, but then when you are ready, you can exchange part of, shares of your business to become a cooperative member of Optima, so that you're not necessarily paying cash to become a member of Optima's co-op, but you're exchanging a share or shares within your business to become a member of Optima. And Optima is it not only has support for freelancers and people interested in, contract work and freelance work, but also for folks who are entrepreneurs in a more wholehearted way and trying to make real and long-lasting structural foundations for business development for the long run. And it has, for those folks, cohorts that are, I believe, 6 months I think like the building a business is a 6-month cohort, and then the freelance cohorts are something smaller or shorter than that. And I actually participated in the UPMA's first cohort and went through 4 6-month segments, and really still connected with the folks of that cohort who are all right now thriving and still grinding and growing their businesses. As well, Optima is involved in helping with the business retention programs that I mentioned earlier. So BAOBAB has partnered with Optima in response to RFPs from various municipalities or policy departments within the cities, like Berkeley, like Oakland, to provide business retention services that are acutely connected with the right now and not just what can be seen from the halls of the city hall, but like on the ground. Like I go out on a regular basis and knock on doors and connect with folks who I know through our membership of BAOBAB, who can make use of the resources that we know are available from the city or from these developer impact fee pools of money that folks who are busy running their businesses may not know or have time to research. So that's the work that we do. And then with the city of Berkeley, for instance, and I believe this will be true, the Black Arts Movement and Business District project in Oakland begins in January. But the Berkeley project we've been doing for the last 12 months. And what has happened is that Optima has been able to custom fit mentors and technical assistance to the needs expressed by the businesses participating in the business retention program. So what I mean by that is, for instance, I can talk about the Berkeley Flea Market. It's a project that is receiving support from the business retention program. And so Optima has been able to connect with them specific advisor technical support that can really get down into the weeds around this ineffective board of directors for this nonprofit, and what are the flea market is a weekly event that happens with 20, 30 different vendors. So connecting with each of the vendors' needs, understanding what changes need to happen on a structural basis with the board of directors of that organization, et cetera, to really restructure the relationship to create a lasting change. And there is a lot of change going on because the development, once again, I don't know if that's happening out where you are in Chicago, but there's a lot of like, we're doing redevelopment in this area. We're doing the Adeline Corridor plan. We're doing the San Pablo Avenue plan. And that's going to mean like, it's just intense. 5 years.
The Lincoln Yards. Yep.
Right. You know what I'm talking about. Like they're moving roads. They're building huge structures. They're trying to deal with the homeless. Their homeless concerns. There's so much going on. Lots and lots of money, and the changes will take lots of time to implement. And then once they are done, there won't be any more changes for, up at that scale in that area for a long time. So now's the time to lock it in. And that's what we're about the business of trying to make happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we are winding down, and so I'll throw just maybe a softball question at you. Maybe it's not a softball, but in all of this work, I mean, in all of this work that's outreach and that's engagement and that's touching upon lots of different parts of the ecosystem, what's nourishing you right now?
I love that. I love that. Well, what's nourishing me right now is participating in a weekly kind of mastermind conversation with my kind of mentor, guide to this process. Her name is Nikki Silvestri, and she started something called the Joy and Impact. And she has us using something where we are every morning, you're meant to start your day by checking out your productivity planner. And really, and it seems really kind of like I mean, I write out my to-do list every day, just like I'm sure you do too. But it was inviting me to, I don't know if you can see this, inviting me to like really estimate how long each project is going to take and being honest about it at the end of the day. Did you spend that time? Was it enough time? Did you need more time? And what I'm learning is that I really have to build in more time. And I'm saying this because I want to share it with other folks and encourage people to not be shy about it. I really need to build more time into my schedule to forecast and feel and reconnect with what it was that brought me to this work in the first place. That thing about, remember I was saying about being in Mexico and that feeling of I'm here because I'm supposed to be here. I don't have to fight for my space to be here. I'm indigenous here. And I can plan long term without fear of retribution or like it's not folly. It's real. And I intend for it to last. And so I want to give it real thought and give myself permission to take a couple hours to forecast and research. Like if I hadn't made that thought to myself today, I wouldn't have had the time to look at the Take Care of Each Other World Tour website that you sent me the link to.
Absolutely.
And oh my God, that changed my day. That really changed my day. That was amazing. And I realized that, yeah, if I hadn't been carving out that time to look at Malikia's website, then I would have missed this whole opportunity to really think deep about what my plans are and where am I taking this work? And the idea, like you mentioned earlier, about going out on the road and connecting with others like yourself in real time, in face to face in human flesh time. And so that's what's nourishing me right now is the remembering and the scheduling the time for deep dives like that.
Excellent. All right. Well, let the people know where they can catch you and keep up on your work.
Thank you. The Cowrie Collective. Cowrie Village. It was Cowrie Collective that brought us to that history.
Absolutely.
Hey, shout out Chinyere. Cowrie Village is at cowrievillage.org. BAOBAB is at baobabdirectory.com. That's our website. But, if you want to stay up to the minute with us, reach us on Instagram, also BAOBAB Directory, and Facebook. BAOBAB Directory, Bay Area Organization of Black-Owned Businesses. And I want to just give you such a shout out, Mike. Thank you so much for the work that you do, for how organized and how decided you are about staying forward focusing and bringing us all together on that same platform.
Yes, well, it's an honor and a pleasure. Really appreciate the time you've given to the conversation this evening. Delighted in talking with you, and look forward to meeting with you on that world tour.
You know it. and so it goes.
So it goes.
Continue. Thank you so much, and I look forward to doing a handshake and giving a hug, and maybe even a little, shoulder rub in my massage practitioner way when I see you.
Tui na. I'll take it.
Absolutely. Have a beautiful and blessed rest of your evening.
All right,
and thank
you as
you
well.
For all folks listening in.
Yes. All right, Yavette, you have a good evening now.
All right then, peace.
Peace. All right, folks. That brings us to the conclusion of the Ujamaa Hour. 1 hour and 20 minutes in. We've managed to do it. I did not get to shout out Co-op for Lib. Co-op for Lib, our bi-weekly gathering. I don't know why it's done that. That's not what I meant to do. Co-op for Lib, Cooperation for Liberation Study and Working Group. We will be meeting up again December 15th for another session at the Breathing Room. That's 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. 3 p.m. to 6 p.m., excuse me. The Breathing Room is at 1434 West 51st Street. That's Cooperation for Liberation Study and Working Group, group that's gathered in Chicago to build cooperative education, cooperative strategy, cooperative developments to actually ensure that we are nourishing our ability to understand these models, to employ these models, to adapt these models to the businesses in our community. Look forward to seeing you there, 1434 West 51st Street, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. So we're there on December 15th. We're not having a public session on December 29th, and we'll be taking a break. And then we'll be back there in January, January 12th, I would like to say. Don't quote me on that. But, every 2 weeks, Co-op for Lib is there at the Breathing Room. And then every second Monday of the month, the Ujamaa Hour is here on your live stream, typically at 7:30, or at least at 7:30 Central Standard Time. Today, we're at 7:30 Pacific time. Come back and catch us next month. I don't know who our guests will be next month. We had a dynamite lineup for 2019. This is the final show of 2019. And we'll be back in 2020 with another lineup and with more guests to make you think, to make you scratch your head, to make you travel to dimensions that you had not imagined. It's been good speaking with you this evening. Until then, peace.